Why are we telling people that they're just never going to go into labor? Why would we say that? Why would we set them up for the distrust of their own body and the own power that's created and sustained a human this whole time? The creative power should be trusted, should be understood, should be acknowledged, should almost be worshiped. Why are we here? Because this has worked so many times, over and over and over. You're gathering the best tools from your generations behind you because you were in the egg that was in the egg all the way back. And you are here because all those people survived. Why aren't we looking at that instead of the scariness of birth? Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. So welcome back. Today's topic is a bit lighter than last episode on consent. I feel like it has to get heavier before it gets lighter because there's a lot of stuff we have to work through. Connection is one of our sexiest topics that we cover in class, and it's really where we start preparing parents as well as we're always working on ourselves in what aspects will make us a better parent because we have to get to know who we are. Not only are we going to start knowing ourselves better and exploring who that topic is before baby arrives, but we're going to explore the connection to baby and the connection to our support. And by support, I'm talking about pregnancy, labor, postpartum, and what gets us through parenting. Because it should start earlier than it does, rather than having a baby in your arms and thinking, I'll just wing it. I know how to do this. There's some thoughtful things you can do ahead of time to prepare yourself and kind of work through the bugs of where you are an expert and where you feel super confident and where you may feel lacking in identity or support or an understanding of who you are.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. You called it the sexy part. I always feel like it's honestly the most fundamental part of not only what we teach, but birth itself, because connection is everything. Connection to other humans is what helps us survive as a species. And we have become so self-reliant. We're pressured to be individual, to do things on our own, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, that we go into pregnancy thinking, I can just tough my way through this. And I'm going to fight my way through this. I'm going to make it happen. But we have to remember that for so many people, especially, connection is what makes you want to start a family, right? You're either connecting to a partner that you want to build a family with, or even choosing to have a baby, even if it's a surprise baby, choosing to carry that baby and build a family with them. That's connection. That is you and your soul looking for connection and creating connection. And if that is really what it's all about, then we need to harness that connection to create the best possible birth experience for us, but for our baby and for our partners as well. And it's a trickle down effect to our whole family. So I'm really excited to talk about this. And yes, definitely lighter than our last conversation.
A little lighter than yesterday's. We recorded it yesterday, but it was last week's topic.
Yes.
When we go into any kind of talk about being a parent, autonomy and understanding who you are is number one, because that shapes how you handle everything that comes up as a parent and comes up during pregnancy and your labor. One of the things that we do in class is we have a set of affirmations that our families go over. We've based them on the chakras. We call them the power centers, which sounds a little woo-woo, but basically those teachings, ancient teachings from the East, when we look at them, just connect you to the powerful parts of who you are and really help you decide, where am I not as good as I want to be? What do I really need to look at? Where am I excelling in these things? And I will tell you, when you think of chakras, and when you're watching the YouTube video, I'm going to be able to put slides up behind me, but you're thinking of that beautiful rainbow pattern, right? Red to purple. And that actually was put in by a white man somewhere between the 1880s and 1927. There was a book by Charles Ledbetter. He published it called The Chakras, and that's where the colors came from. Before that, there were no colors assigned to it. They were just symbols and parts of our bodies that we tapped into when we needed to learn something, explore something. So I just wanted to mention that we do use the rainbow colors because it's very easy to track as human beings because there's a pattern there. We know what those colors are. So we still use those colors just as an easy marker to figure out where you're at. So in birth, the energy goes from top down, right? We're expelling a human being. So we start at the top of the head and move down with the chakra colors or the power centers rather than start at the root and move up. It's pretty simple when you look at a diagram of where those dots are in your body. And those power centers are things that are instilled in you. And everybody's interpretation is going to be different. So as I'm speaking about what those are, we're going to start at the top, which is the crown, which is the crown chakra, the spiritual center. Spiritual can mean anything. It is not religious, so to speak. It is basically your belief system. What do you as an individual believe? This is what you're going to be instilling in your child. These can be traditions that have been passed on through your family, and that's what you believe because that was your tradition. It can be religious beliefs. Spirituality to me means a myriad of things. It's just basically what I believe and what I hold true. What are my core belief systems? When we start with that, which is the color purple, and we start going through our affirmations, I'll give you a side note too. Affirmations are one of the best labor support tools you can have. As you listen to those over and over in a repetitive way throughout your pregnancy, they become almost rote. You just know what's coming next. So as a surge or a wave comes and that starts and you're listening to your affirmations, you're listening for the next one. You're listening to the next one. Oh, surge is over. It literally distracts you from what your body is going to be naturally doing. So they work really well, especially if you have done them over and over and over, because they're a support tool to distract your mind from what's going on in your body, which as a mammal, we need to distract our mind. So when we start with our spiritual beliefs, which can be core beliefs, that right and wrong, whatever you hold true to be that, you're going to start to know, do I really believe that? Is this what I'm going to raise my child with? Is this just what I've been taught? Or, you're really starting to decipher stuff because it's going to come up as a parent. It's going to come up when your child brings something up. Ashley, you got 3 12-year-olds. What's come up with their stuff that you go, ooh, where's that?
Yeah. Honestly, there was just a huge shift for me when I had my kids from, I guess, what I thought I believed. And we will talk about this so much in our time together, but, I've always been a very healthily skeptical person my whole life, ever since I was very little. But I was really clinging to these beliefs that I thought I had. And as soon as I had my kids, everything shifted. And I realized, wow, I really don't believe any of that. And what I do believe is that I need to be making things better for my kids. And I need to try to make this world better for my kids. And I need to try to be my best self for my kids. And honestly, it shifted my whole world perspective. It's also what thrust me into doula work, right? Having them created a passion in me that I never experienced before to just completely shift careers and do something completely different. After you have 3 babies, now is the time to do a big career change. How? But it's because of the great sort of seismic shift that happened in me spiritually, truly becoming their mom. And so, yeah, that's been huge for me. And then moving forward through life with them, trying to shift parenting and even my own self-talk, how I treat myself, how I love myself, how I treat my body and talk about my body with my kids. There's so many things that we're trying to heal and undo and do differently by our kids. And I think that we think and talk so much about being pregnant and having a baby. But really, when we talk about connection, and Karen and I talk about a lot, is that this goes beyond just the idea of getting through the labor and the birth process. It's about your spirituality carrying you through your transformation into a parent. And like Kara said, it doesn't have to be religious. I'm not a religious person by any means, but I do feel energy deeply and I feel connection deeply. And that spirituality, connection to others, can be your spirituality. And like she said, just what you hold to be true and yourself. And for some people, they don't know and they've never examined it before. And that's what we're asking you to do as you venture into becoming a parent, is to stop and look and think about, who am I? Because it's such an important foundational piece to the connection you need to create this positive birth experience.
And you're moving away from your family of origin when you become a parent. Yes, you're part of a greater whole, but the reality is you're the new and the old will die. So what you're creating right now is the future for your kids, because you're going to be the great grandmother at some point. So it is important that you know solidly who you are, what you believe in, what you want to stand for, and how you can create that kind of loving environment for your babies. Next, we're going to move down to intuition, which is third eye. It's an indigo, which I love the color indigo. And it is trusting your instincts. What does your gut say? How many times have you thought, oh, I should go blah, 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 and you ignore it and it bites you in the butt? But your gut told you to do it. You've got some kind of a prompting or a nudge of who you can trust and who you can't. I guarantee that instinctual intuition, for one, is on overdrive when you're pregnant, because you know who you can trust, what makes you fearful, because biologically you are set to be on overdrive to protect your baby. But not only that, who's going to be safe with your baby? If you have a little nudge that so-and-so is just not a safe person, and you ignore that and you find out later, right? We want you to start really developing your intuition and trusting it because it's right. We have an innate knowing in us how to protect ourselves and also who we can trust. It's biological. And we can clearly sense a direction we need to go when we start trusting that. And it's especially true in your birth journey, your labor journey, how you connect with your providers, all that kind of stuff. The next section that we go to and we heavily talk about every week in class is obviously your voice. We're going to blue, your power center, which is communication. How clear are your words? How clear are your questions? Are you able to speak up for yourself in every situation? Where has your voice been muffled as you were growing up? I was told not to talk, which is funny that I'm doing a podcast now. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I heard it all the time. Even you look at my report cards for my teachers. They're like, she never shuts up. She never sits down. She's visiting at everybody's table. Like, it's just who I am. And it was one of the things that drove my parents insane, mainly my mom. And it was a quiet. I continually picked things like debate team where I could talk, like theater where I could be as loud as I wanted because I was so shushed at home. And those things I'm still breaking out of to this day and trying to help Angie, my older daughter, speak up. Say what you need to say. It's okay. Like, is this going to matter in 5 years? Absolutely not, but it matters to you now. Have the conversation. If other people can't handle it, that's their problem. But you shouldn't be the one holding the bag forever because that can be traumatic.
I would say intuition and communication are the two biggest ones that I really hammer home with my students and my clients about the things that you really need to lean into. And I can sense the overwhelm when I'm introducing these ideas in class. When I say intuition, I can see the panic where they're like, but I don't know anything. I don't know anything about this. But that's really not what intuition is about. You don't have to actually have the answer or the antidote to something that doesn't feel right. You're allowed to just know that it doesn't feel right and move away from it or make some change or whatever, and then figure out later how you're going to fill in for that. But I feel like families come into our classes feeling like they need to know all the answers. And sometimes it feels like they think they need to know all the answers before class even starts. And I'm like, no, that's literally why you're here, is to take these tools and bolster your intuition and increase your communication. And people can also get overwhelmed by, these power centers and how the affirmations and how am I supposed to go through all of these? And that's why I say, you're going to spend time with the center that needs your attention in that moment. So if you feel like I'm just having this gnawing feeling about my provider, I don't think I'm in the right place, that's your intuition. And maybe you need to spend a little time in that space with those affirmations, addressing your intuition. And if you feel like, gosh, I have to have this hard conversation with my mom about boundaries around the birth room, and I don't know if I want her at the birth. Communication. You need to spend some time in your communication centers. And each of these has their place, but if I had to say there's two that I really want families to like deeply spend time with, it is learning to trust their intuition. We've gotten so far away from that. We are just basically raised not to trust ourselves at all. And it comes from so many different backgrounds. You've talked about really religious backgrounds. Intuition is often considered to be like oppositional to like the higher power, like your instincts are off. But in society as well, it's always very much respect authority, which we talked a lot about in our last episode, rather than the authority you have over yourself and your body. And so I think that those two things, communication and intuition, we work really, really hard to get our families locked into those and embracing those as they go into their birth experience.
Absolutely true. And I was very intuitive growing up, but also that came with the shushing of the communication because the gifts that I did have were not accepted. They weren't the standard. And loosening that up has made me a better parent, has made me a better teacher, has made me a better friend, has made me a better communicator. And we're all here to improve. That is what these touch centers are in our bodies. This is why we call them power centers. Next, we're going to move down to the heart, the green, the love center. I love the color green in that particular one because green is new, it's fresh. It helps us explore what we need to open up in ourselves. We tend to close our hearts off because we've been hurt, because we're scared to be hurt. One of the reasons that we go with certain directions with our providers, because we're so scared to lose another baby if we come from loss, that we will do whatever in order to protect that from happening. However, we like lose all of our own decision-making skills in that because we're turning it all over to a provider. We cover our hearts up and we're not meant to. We're meant to explore our love and take risks with our love in that, yes, it's going to be painful sometimes, but we shouldn't limit the capacity we have to love because it is our greatest power. And our intention to love is how we're going to share with our children how much they can love and how safe it is to love.
This reminds me a little bit of what we talked about yesterday about the fear of love and the fear of loss, that fear of how can I love someone so much that's in my body that's going to be out of my body. I see that a lot come up with clients in labor, that fear of letting the baby out of their body because this has felt safe. This has become their like comfortable normal. And once the baby's on the outside, now they have to share them with the world or the world can hurt them. And that's what love does. And so I feel like a lot of the fear and anxiety we have, especially with millennials, as well as fear and anxiety about being good parents, about not repeating patterns, just like all the fear and anxiety that just like vibrates through our bodies and the fear and anxiety that the internet cultivates can block that. It can get in the way of that. It can make us so afraid to love and to open up to that love. And it can actually disrupt our ability to let love flow with our baby because we're so worried about doing it right and getting it right and not losing and not experiencing loss or trauma that we are holding back. And that definitely shows up in labor. For sure.
When it shows up in parenthood, Angie's 26 and I still want to wrap her in bubble wrap and put her in a closet. And she's got a place of her own that she's purchased with her boyfriend. Like she's solid and I still want to protect her. Don't go running. I'm still constantly thinking about the loss, what the loss would be like instead of just staying present and loving her moment by moment. And
it's so hard.
It's so hard. And next we're going to go down to the yellow power center, which is our solar plexus right below our heart center. This is our self-esteem. This is our personal responsibility, taking ownership for our lives, for our births, for our labors, for our postpartum, for our parenthood journey. Where do we not take ownership? Where are we pointing to everybody else and blaming everybody else for what's going on when we always have a choice? We always have a choice. We can continue on with what we're doing, or we can stay stuck where we feel stuck. There's always a way to change things up because we are an autonomous human being. And I don't know very many people, at least in my generation, who were taught that. We were the latchkey kids. Our parents were working. we were told to shut up and just go play outside, do something like that. I love those TikToks about Gen Xers of why were you guys outside drinking out of a hose? Because we weren't allowed inside, dude. That hot water first came out was a bugger, right? You had to wait till it got cold. And there are some places that was recycled water. We were drinking it anyway. So understanding where you come from and what you were taught about personal responsibility, or were you just taught to follow rules? Because a lot of us were trained that rules were the way to go. I still fight that in me, that there's a system for how everything works. And there's no flow in it because there's a system, there's a rule, there's a set of rules. And I don't want to be the bad girl and not follow those rules. But as an autonomous human being, just like one of the things we talk about, when you walk into a hospital, it is a building. It's an institution, but it's a corporation. It's an office building. You can eat and drink in any building you walk into. You don't have to ask permission for that. If you choose to tell your providers, yeah, by the way, I just had a Big Mac, but I'm eating, you are an autonomous person all the time and taking ownership for that. I think one of the things that has come up in class is, what if my water breaks? I don't want to go right in. I'm like, self-evaluate yourself. You don't have to go right in, or you can go right in, but don't mislead your provider and go in 2 hours later or 20 hours later and tell them it just happened on the way over. Owning your birth means owning your choices. If somebody wants to shame you for those choices, you can literally say, are you shaming me for a choice that I made for my body? Like, you can take ownership for that. And I want you to start understanding what that means, because the gravity of it will make you a better parent, because you're going to become this mama bear, mama parent to these babies. And you're going to need to be able to take ownership for what they've done and for how you may have raised them, etc.
You're going to hear us say over and over again that you can't rely on your provider, your educator, your doula, your partner to go through this for you, to birth your baby for you, to make these decisions for you. You have to take ownership over who you are, what you believe, what you're doing with your body. And really, that's what this is all about, is taking ownership, authority over your choices, owning your choices, even if you may ultimately regret your choice. Take ownership for it, take responsibility for it. And what you'll find is when you really lean into that responsibility, as well as leaning into connection, it's hard to make a wrong decision. It really is. If you're trusting your intuition, if you're really communicating with the people around you and you're trusting the process, you're not going to make a wrong decision when it comes to your birth.
And I think also taking ownership is asking more questions. If you don't have enough information, ask until you feel comfortable with making the choice. Don't get railroaded, because it felt like there was short time. There was only a 3-minute visit and I was taking over my OBs all their time. And once again, that's your choice to feel that way and to go that direction. But if you need more time before you schedule your induction or you make those choices for whatever procedures you're doing, then don't make it in that moment. Say, I need more information. So thank you for the conversation. And if you have anything you'd like to send me via article or whatever, but I'm going to discuss it with my partner and we'll come back with a decision next week. You do not have to feel railroaded once you understand ownership, because the power goes right back to where it's supposed to be, which is with you. The next power center, we're dropping down into orange, which is in your uterine section, which is sexuality, the creative center. This is the part where I absolutely love to drop in with parents and talk about, your baby has been growing this whole time without a checklist. Like, even if you were impregnated and was set into your body, there's been no checklist. Your baby has continued to take the nourishment from your body. Your innate wisdom has grown this baby. They're flourishing, they're eating, they're drinking, they're growing toenails and fingernails and a heart and a brain, and they're doing everything because that's the initiation of the power that you have in your body. The creative power should be trusted, should be understood, should be acknowledged, should almost be worshiped. Why are we here? Because this has worked so many times, over and over and over. You're gathering the best tools from your generations behind you, because you were in the egg that was in the egg all the way back. And you are here because all those people survived. Why aren't we looking at that instead of the scariness of birth? Why aren't we looking at the divinity, however you want to interpret that, as this creation that is what we are made up of? Connecting to that power is who you are. It's who your baby will be. Honoring their journey from that standpoint. It's not just a blob inside you. It's something that's growing and learning and taking in all the good and bad things from your pregnancy, from the stress hormones, from the good thoughts that you're putting in. That's all making up their experience right now. It's a beautiful power that's already happening inside you. Why can't that happen as they exit your body?
I love that. I love it. As I go through this with parents all the time, and it's also an idea that I love, like that we are the confluence of all of our ancestors coming together to create us. Like we are all of those pieces coming together, and really trying to get parents to think about the fact that we are, I think, what did we just pass? 8 billion people on the planet, because this works pretty well most of the time. That when things go wrong and things don't work, those are the outliers. And in fact, this process works very well. Sometimes it works very well despite our best efforts. Sometimes it works very well despite our means, right? What we have available to us. Think about our great grandparents being gestated during the Great Depression and us still being here, regardless of that, right? Because of our ability to survive and thrive under so many different conditions. And so if we can look at it that way, as like the things that we go through, that we are here despite all of that and because of all of that. And we are capable of bringing our baby into the world just as generations and generations before us did, even under all of the circumstances that they faced as well. That even though, yeah, we do have hardships, this is a hard world to be a human being in, we can still do it. We can still get our babies here safely, and our bodies already have the wisdom that they need in them to bring our baby forth. And so does our baby, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. And when we use the creative center, when we're talking about that particular section of our bodies, that's the labor, right? That's where that baby is going to be coming from. It knows when to start. It knows what to do. There's never been a person that's been pregnant forever. It's just not a thing. Like I've heard moms say, I never went into labor on my last 2 births. I never went into labor. When were you induced? At 40 weeks. Why are we telling people that they're just never going to go into labor? Why would we say that? Why would we set them up for the distrust of their own body and the own power that's created and sustained a human this whole time? It's one of my pet peeves, obviously, because I'm bringing it up. We drop into the bottom, the root power center, represented by red, safety and security and stability. Where does our confidence come from? How do we feel most safe? What makes us feel the safest? What do we want to pass on to our babies to make them feel safe and secure in the world? Where do we have a mistrust of how we feel safe? When we go into the root, I want you to think about how you're created. When you start as 2 cells coming together, it starts to form a little zygote, right? Moving into a little circle, like a shell. If you've ever seen one of those really beautiful shells that just starts out as that is actually, that tissue is your psoas muscle. So it actually holds all of the things that you're bringing into that birth, whether you were a surprise birth, a planned birth, the love, the scary, whatever, is stored in that tissue, okay, as it's forming and growing like that. That is the root of who you are. Emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, physically, that tissue, the psoas muscle, that is your solid or shaky foundation. How are you going to change that before labor begins, before parenthood begins? Where are you most confident? I'm most confident in finding my voice. I am most confident in how I can support myself. I am most confident in the partner that I've chosen. Where are you the least confident? In trust. I'm scared to open my heart up. There's so many different ways that you can look at red and confidence, and also your stability and trust in the world. That I think it's our foundation. And we need to figure that out before we have children. But we aren't told that we should take parenting classes. We aren't told that we should take birth classes earlier and think about it. I know the reason I'm not teaching high school kids is because they'd all be so excited they'd be pregnant by the end of their senior year, because they'd be like, I want connection, because I'm so enthusiastic about it. There is a reason that I don't teach junior high and high school students. However, we don't look at it enough on a spiritual level as to where that connection comes from in our stability and our appreciation and how we can succeed in life.
There's so many cultures around the world that have such a thoughtfulness around, working on your own stuff, getting yourself correct before you consciously have a child. And there's so many cultures that are light years ahead of Western society when it comes to this emotional intelligence that it takes to really straighten yourself out, essentially, to be the most solid foundation for your child. But you can work on it through your pregnancy. It can be an active effort through your parenting to find your confidence, to find your footing. Like most of us, especially in the West, stumble into parenting. And it's okay to go in and say, like, I don't feel 100% confidence in this. All the time, people will say, how do you know when you're ready to be a parent? You really don't. Not here, not in these circumstances. You just have to kind of figure it out as you go. And that's okay. I never want people to think, just like the education piece, I don't want them coming into class thinking they have to know everything already. And I don't think that people need to be 100% confident in their ability to birth and parent a child to be good parents, right? But it's the desire to be confident, the desire to be the best. That is really what you're going to build your confidence on. And as I tell families all the time, bad parents don't worry about this stuff. Bad parents don't care about the foundation that they're parenting their children from or their confidence. They just do what they're going to do. The fact that you're even thinking about, how do I become the parent I want to be? How do I give my child this life that I want them to have, already makes you a good parent. And I think just hearing that and believing that can be a huge source to start building your confidence on in who you are as a parent, is knowing that caring is enough of a baseline. That just desire is enough of a baseline to cultivate the parent you want to be and the confidence that you need to go through this process.
And we talk about, Ashley and I anyway, talk about there are no absolutes in birth, right? What you've seen on the big black TV screen all growing up are emergency births where everybody dies, or they're so fast and they're so painful. And so that's in your mind an absolute for birth. It's not. And having a big baby, not an absolute. Having a C-section, not an absolute. Your whole birth experience is your child's birth experience. It's still being written. There are no absolutes. So even when you go through these power centers, your experience and what you're sifting through is completely different than what I'm sifting through, completely different than the parent across you, completely different than your partner, because they were raised by different people too. It is such a place to start connecting to the forgiveness and the love that you need for yourself for what you're bringing into the situation, because you're going to mess it up. It's messy. That's just life. And I came in with hard things. I will not be my mother. Oh my gosh, guess what? How many times did I put all this stuff on Angie that was exactly what my mom did to me, framed a little differently, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm my mother. The one thing I don't want to be, right, in this instant, and I am. It's messy and it's okay. And you can forgive. I've given Angie a blanket. I'm sorry. If I have ever done anything to ruin you, hurt you, mess you up, tell me what it is, and I'm going to apologize to you because I messed up, because I didn't know, because I didn't know how you would interpret it. I never got that. If somebody can give me a blanket, I'm sorry, and I can go to them and know that they're not going to take it personal. We come in with what we come in with, and it's messy. I'm going to say that a million times. We should make a t-shirt. Life is messy, because it is. But forgive yourself for messing up. I am so sorry for the things that I've done to hurt other people. I know people are sorry for the things they've done to hurt me, even if they haven't expressed it. They don't need to, because we're coming from a place that we're all doing the best we can, and we shouldn't be taking it personal. So this is where we start when we talk about affirmations and sifting through. We ask both parents, if there are two parents in class, to think about what they're bringing in from their parents? What are the best parts and what are the worst parts? What are the things you don't want? What are the things you do want? What traditions will make your house feel homey and loved? And I've so many parents say, I want dinner at 5:00. No screens, no phones, just time. I never got that as a kid. I want family dinner, that traditional 1950s dinner where we're chatting and laughing and we're talking about what were the good parts of your day? What were the bad parts of today? Who did you help today? Because there's so many traditions and things that you can do to instill a very good sense of stability in your family. I always wanted to be that house where all the kids came to play. And I did a pretty good job of that when Angie was growing up. I think I was over the top. I was the one who dressed up as Dr. Seuss for Dr. Seuss Week and embarrassed the heck out of my kid, but I didn't have that. So once again, note where you may go overboard and humiliate your child. But anyway, that's where we start with examining self. And then now let's move into baby. How are we connecting with our babies?
So we're going to talk a lot about the stuff that we share with parents coming into our education and coming into my doula services, because there's a lot of talk about connecting with baby, bonding with baby once they're out, right? We hear about skin to skin and the golden hour and bonding. I feel especially in the last 20 years, that's just been, you're just like beaten over the head with like bonding. But we are often programmed to see it as this thing that happens once the baby's out. And that once we have that baby skin to skin, the bonding begins. But you're already connecting with and bonding with your baby. From the moment you find out that you're pregnant, whatever those circumstances are, you are cultivating a relationship with baby. And even before you're aware of it, right? You're cultivating a relationship with your baby before you're aware, unconsciously, through your hormones and your emotions. And then once you find out, consciously through your thoughts. And we are constantly communicating with our babies via the routes of hormones and our heartbeats and our blood flow and all of that stuff. But what we're feeling, how we're moving through the world, what we're experiencing, we are constantly communicating it to our babies. And then they develop to a point where they can hear our voices in utero. So then we are communicating to them with our voices, with our music, with our whatever's around us, and our relationship with, if there's another parent in the picture, that they're experiencing what's flowing back and forth between us and the household and all of that stuff. We in Western society have completely lost sight of the consciousness of connecting with babies before they're here. And if you can connect with your baby before labor starts, you are setting yourself up for success in your labor and being able to follow your baby's lead through the birth process. Why? Because your baby, as they are forming in your belly, their initial programming is how to get here safely, how to navigate your pelvis and get out of your body safely. It's innate. It's literally built into them. It's in their biology to be born. They are going to do what they need to do to get here safely, whether that aligns with our plans or not. And so if we can cultivate a relationship with this baby and start to recognize this baby as a human being, as a family member, as our child in our belly, before they're in our arms, then when our labor starts to happen, we can see it unfolding in the way that our child needs to and make changes accordingly. That's why I said earlier, when you are thinking about your baby, you really can't make a wrong decision. And I'd say this to our parents all the time. When you put this baby that you have been building this relationship with at the center of your decision making in your pregnancy and your birth, you will not make a wrong decision. And whether that's going along with your perfect labor plan that you thought of, or you're making changes for your baby, but you're following your baby's lead because you have built a relationship with this baby. And there's so much research, and it continues to grow all the time, about the fact that babies do experience the world in your womb, through your womb, and that babies are not passive potatoes, as I call them, or passive passengers, as they had sometimes been referred to in different studies in our sort of past discussions about birth. They are active participants in the pregnancy and birth process, and they are going to turn and rotate and do these things that their programming tells them to do. if we're connected to them, we can really follow that lead. And the other big piece that I'm sure Care can speak to is trust in the fact that this baby in this time trusts you as their parent. I get parents all the time that say, I just don't know. I don't know anything. I don't have any skills. I'm not very strong. I'm weak. I'm scared. I'm da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, on and on about all of these deficits that they have as a person. And I say, and yet, despite all of that you just told me about everything that's wrong with you, here your baby is in your belly, growing at this time, trusting you to bring them into this world and to parent them. Wow. What does that say about you? That this baby at this time is forming in your belly, is growing in your belly, is thriving, and is going to be your child. And I think that it means so much to them, and I know it means a lot to me, to see ourselves through the perspective of this child that trusts us. And we always think about it afterwards. We almost picture that 2-year-old reaching out their arms. My child trusts me. But then when I say to parents, but they're already here. I have already chosen you. They already trust you. They're here to go through this process with you. We can start that reframing perspective on ourselves now, before they get here, before they're that 2-year-old. And we can really start to believe in and trust in ourselves through this child's choice to be here and go through this process with us. I know we could literally talk about this all day, Care.
We could, because we do believe babies choose parents. I believe I chose my parents. I needed those lessons learned. That's who created who I am. And we do need to be easier on ourselves. And I'm speaking of, I need to be easier on myself and forgive myself as well. Your baby looks at you like you are a god. Like you are the goddess. You are the everything to them. You can do no wrong. They literally have a blank slate of love and understanding for you. And they do look at you like that because you're the one showing them everything. You're the one taking them to their first nature hike. You're the one taking them and putting their feet in grass for the first time. They're already looking at you like that. And when you start making decisions while you're pregnant through the eyes of, what would my baby want? Would my baby want this provider delivering them? Would my baby want this kind of support after I have them? Would my baby want my lack of boundaries that can't protect them? It shifts everything when you start looking at it from that point of view. And while that's pretty heavy, it's also very freeing because you're starting to take on the parent role that maybe your parents didn't, maybe definitely our great grandparents didn't, and shifting their world to be what's best for them. And while we all want that, we don't always make conscious choices about that. We're just like, I'm pregnant, gender reveal. I'm pregnant, baby shower. I'm pregnant. I bought a snoo. I'm pregnant. We're not even thinking about the intricate details that keep us connected and bonded as a society and as human beings and families. So definitely, yeah, we could talk about that all day. That could be a whole other episode, Ash.
I love this sort of awakening that I see in families when we start talking about this. And I particularly, we'll get a lot of partners that sort of come in being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know how I'm going to be a participant in this. They're growing the baby. I'm just here. And then they have to have the baby and I'm just going to be there. And that I see this awakening that happens as I'm talking to them about what you said, what would you want if you were a baby? And what do you want for your baby? And how do you want your baby to come to the world? Where I see partners that are like, I'm going to be hiding in the corner to, I'm going to catch my baby.
That's the sexiest part about being an educator. They come in the first week and they're terrified, crouching individuals in the background, not wanting to see a vagina. And by the end, they're like, if I was my son, I would want my hands on that head before anyone else. Well, if I was my daughter, I would want to be held by my dad first. Or if and it's like, they get it. They get it because it goes from, I feel insecure and not important to, I'm going to be the confident one in that room that holds the stability. So sexy.
Yeah. And I think for the person having the baby, that too can often feel like what's happening down there is none of my business. Like I'm the midwife or doctor's in charge of that. Like I don't even know. To like, oh, I'm going to reach down and bring my baby up on my chest myself. Like I want to be the first hands that touch my baby. And again, thinking about what my baby wants, what I would want, how am I going to make this a positive experience for my baby? And if you take nothing away from this, I want you to hear this. The actual door your baby comes out of from your body, the least important part of this process, vagina or sunroof, that's not what we're talking about. What is happening in that room, whether it's in a hospital or in your living room, whether it's the delivery room or an operating room, it is about the feeling in the room. It's about the intention. And again, like we say, birth is unpredictable, right? It's fluid. It is not something that you can plan each step of the way. And best intentions fail. We can say, I'm going to have this unmedicated birth at home, and then we end up transferring and having a C-section. But the consciousness, the education, the thought, the understanding that this is an experience that our baby is going through is going to create a beautiful, positive birth experience for this baby, regardless of where it happens, regardless of which door they come out of, regardless of the four walls and roof that surround that birth. It will be beautiful and positive and healing. You can take so many of the pieces that you would want in a vaginal birth and lay them right over a cesarean and create the most beautiful, connected, sexiest, most amazing family-centered cesarean your hospital has ever seen. And we're going to do a whole episode about family-centered cesareans, but it's consciousness, it's awareness, it's connection that makes the difference. And if you can start building and cultivating and trusting and believing that you have a relationship with this baby now, and that they trust you and you trust them, and that you are a team working together, you're going to create a healing, positive, beautiful experience. We're talking about healing that can be intergenerational for you, for your baby, sometimes even for our parents to go through a positive birth experience like that. But it's all about that awareness and that consciousness.
So sexy.
So sexy.
As we're beginning to talk about your support team through pregnancy, through labor, through postpartum, through the rest of your life as a parent, the number one thing that comes up and is what we talk about are boundaries. And I want to clarify what boundaries are. Boundaries are not a line in the sand that people cross over and devastate you. That is not a boundary. That's just a line in the sand. A boundary is, I'm going to tell my mother that when she does this thing, that I will not be engaging because it's not healthy for me. And then when your mother does that thing, you don't engage because it's not healthy for you to do the thing. People cross boundaries all the time, but it's how you engage or disengage with that information. And also the other boundary is, what will you welcome in? What are you okay with? Because that needs to be discussed when we talk about boundaries too. And we do this a lot in our doula program when we talk about boundaries. A lot of doulas come into the world, the birth world, as complete givers. Don't have any hard stops. Everything is love, 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 love. Let me support, let me take care of, let me save, which is not healthy for anybody. And it will lead to burnout, and you'll be out of the doula world very quickly. So whether you're a parent, whether you're a birth worker, boundaries are things that you set for yourself that take care of you, that you set for your baby that take care of you, that you set for your family that take care of you. When you see that certain people don't want you to feel taken care of and whole, that's a big tell. And you want people that surround you and your family that want you to be whole and connected and taken care of. I have a lot of chosen family, not a lot of regular family, for that reason. And I have learned for myself that chosen family can be just as powerful as family, and that you can also have family that starts to shape shift into, that makes sense. Why didn't we grow up with that? And they can also change and evolve. We're not always perfect. I'm still not always perfect in it. But understanding that your boundaries and setting those boundaries starts now because you're shifting your nuclear family. So when we talk about support, Obviously, partner support is number one, and that communication needs to be on point. So a lot of our classes are centered on what kind of discussions can we have after class that open this up, so that there's nothing left hidden, because you're going to parent better if there's no secrets. You're going to parent better if you both have a voice. You're going to parent better if you don't attack each other, but listen to each other and hold each other in those moments of insecurity and lack of understanding.
When we talk about support, again, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning about this sort of individualism and really having to do everything on our own. Birth requires us to rely on other people. You really can't 100% birth without support, or, postpartum without support, or parent without support. We've grown as a humanity relying on the village. And only really in the West are we so pushed into doing it on our own and being alone. We're not designed for this. We're not designed to be by ourselves. But I want to really encourage you to curate and cultivate support, not just bodies around you. If the people around you are being negative about the type of birth that you want, or the type of parent you're going to be, that's not support. That is not connection. And that feeds into that self-doubt. And it will come up in our birth if we are constantly surrounding ourselves with people who are, for lack of a better word, shitting on us, especially when it comes to birth. So I always encourage people to really curate who they are close with intimately through the pregnancy and birth process. Truly, that maybe we still have lunch with our friend and our sister who loved their C-section when we want a natural birth, but we just don't talk about the birth in that time, right? We create our safety net of people that we feel safe being honest about our fears and concerns and the type of birth we want. We look for education that is going to help us achieve the birth that we want, that it gives us information that support what we're looking for. And we try to find a care provider that's going to give us the type of support that we're looking for. Maybe we hire a doula. People sometimes will get a little weird when I talk about hiring a doula, like I'm going to have a stranger in the room. I'm going to hire a stranger to help me have a baby. But by
As
the
if
time
a doctor and nurses aren't strangers, right?
Yes. And that's really when people have had a doula, that's what they'll say is like, I think of my doula as a stranger that I hired initially, but on the day of the birth, my doula was the only person in the room who wasn't a stranger. And that's because you have cultivated a relationship with them, but you're cultivating a relationship with somebody who knows birth. So they're going to be helping you build those relationships with your partner and your baby. You really need to create your village. Village is something we have to be very intentional about now, especially in the West. We have to create it. We're not just going to find it most of the time. Many of us live, like you said, we're the new household. We live far away from where our parents lived, or we don't have a relationship with our parents, or we're on our own. And so sometimes we have to cultivate it, whether that's finding online support groups or our local parenting groups or whatever it is. You have to be cultivating it. And the more you can do while you're pregnant to support you through the pregnancy, through the labor, but as well as postpartum, critically important to find safe places and safe people that you can connect with postpartum as well. This is an entire journey that you're going on. And that connection to support is so, so important.
Well, and we really need to understand that postpartum is lifetime. And I would say 99% of the time, we're so focused on the labor and the birth that we don't think about how much we need on the outside. We've been trained to do it all on our own. Absolutely not true. It will not work. And I'm a single mom. Do you think I've done this by myself? No. Yeah, there's hard parts that I'm doing all by myself, but I have really strong friends and allies that step up all the time, even when times I don't ask, because I've been trained not to ask and I do it all myself. It's critical for your baby to have that extra support. And can we talk about partner support really quickly? Your partner gets lost, whether they're male, female, whatever, it doesn't matter. All the focus is on you and the baby. They need people before this baby comes to turn to that they can have discussions with, like, hey, I'm experiencing this. Did you go through this? Postpartum depression happens in partners as well. And they need just as much support as you do, but they have to look ahead of it and find it ahead of time because it's not usually offered. So please really take that into consideration about who are the 3 people you could go to that are going to help you, because that's only going to support the baby more, right? But your partners need support as well. And it needs to be a conscious choice and decision to look outside to find that, because it's not normal in our society, but it's essential.
Yeah. And I think that in terms of the birth itself, the biggest thing that I really encourage parents to think about is not, because connection is the most important thing and it is such an intimate experience, that we're not saying you need a big group of people around you. And especially for the birth, it should be as intimate as possible. And go back to the power centers, go back to the things that you're learning about yourself and connecting with your baby. And again, curate, right? Be thoughtful and specific about who's in the room and who's supporting you, including the postpartum period, right? Are they coming to support? Are they coming to hold a baby? Are they coming to the birth because they want to watch? Or are they there to help you and support you? Are they there to criticize you? Are they there to scare you? Right? So just because somebody's related to you or they feel that they are entitled to your birth room or to your postpartum space, no, they're not. Nobody is entitled to that space except you. So it's okay to be thoughtful and discriminatory about who gets to be in your space as you're meeting your child and as you are healing from and growing together with your child in that postpartum period. That we're not saying you need to be so desperate for connection that you need to just let everybody in, let everybody help you, because not everybody is there to help. Everybody has their own motivation. So, definitely don't have to invite anybody into your birth space that is not there to support you and help you. And anybody who comes in needs to be on board with the type of birth that you want, with the type of education that you have, and respect your boundaries. And if they don't, they're out. And the same is true for postpartum. They're not entitled to your space. If they're not okay with your breastfeeding and your boobs being out and the realities of postpartum and they're not there to help, they're not entitled to be in that space. So connection is real. It's not just bodies in the room. It's not just people taking up your space. And we want you to really hold that up as a standard. So when we talk about connection, we're not just talking about like, hey, connect with other people despite everything. No, connect with the right people and get your needs met through those connections and your partner and your baby as well.
And that was perfect. And I can't say anything else. That was great, Ash. All right. We will see you all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.